We don't even have a full-scale strike at Canada Post. We just have rotating strikes. But I would actually like to use some of my time to ask the Minister of Labour whether she attempted to negotiate an essential service protocol with the employees of Canada Post to ensure that they would continue to deliver the checks to low-income people and to charities that she's spoken about and deems to be such an important service. So I'm wondering if I could turn it over to the Minister of Labour to answer that question.
Minister of Labour.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that the member opposite realizes that we have a high degree of respect for organized labour, and in fact such a degree of respect that the first piece of legislation that we introduced and passed was Bill C-4, which restored the rights of organized labour to collectively bargain and organize, which repealed 525 and 377, two very harmful pieces of legislation that the Conservatives had rammed through this House in an effort to actually diminish the ability of organized labour to grow their movement, to work, as the member points out, on ensuring that there's decent work for people all across the country. We also ratified ILO 98, which guarantees the right to organizing and collective bargaining. We've introduced legislation that we've worked on with unions, that unions have been calling for decades, things like pay equity, federally regulated proactive pay equity, something that unions have been calling for, including the union that's involved in this dispute, flexible work arrangements, protecting federally regulated workers from the experience of violence or harassment in the workplace, C-65, which recently passed. We've introduced updates to the Canada Labour Code to modernize the Canada Labour Code and protect the most vulnerable in the workplace, again in partnership with organized labour. The list goes on, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the work that we've done in partnership with unions, because we recognize the important role they play in establishing a standard that often protects the most vulnerable, in fact, people who are not unionized in this country. But I will also speak to the second part of the member's question. The member asked, what have we done to actually ensure that we could work with the parties to arrive at a collective agreement, or to help them arrive at a collective agreement? And I will tell you that, in my perspective, we've done everything we can to support the parties to get there themselves. For example, over a year ago, both parties agreed to work with a mediator. So we appointed the Federal Mediation Service early on in their talks to help them have productive talks, to work through some of the substantial issues that both the union was facing and the corporation was facing. The mediators worked with the parties for well over a year.